Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Mission Makers. We are back in our little home in London, Blue Marlin, Ibiza. Thank you so much for having us. We've got another really interesting podcast today with some of the best emerging talent in London. I'm joined by B.o.T to my right and Kakura to my left, and especially from New York, Chris, also known by his artist name Nhii, which stands for No Human is Illegal. I love that. Has flown in especially from New York because we are hosting a label showcase for his label Sounds of Khemit. So yeah, welcome everybody. Chris, how are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. This is a fun night. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for everyone joining the label showcase and for organizing this podcast. I'm very excited. Let's kick it.
Amazing. So let's start with you, Chris. Or actually, let's start with you, Kyle. So I just noticed a few of the mics passing out. Um, I'd love to know how everyone here basically got involved with the Sounds of Kemet family, because all of us are obviously artists under the Sounds of Kemet label.
Well, we were acquainted with Nhii a while back. We had some shows in Italy, and at that time he was starting out his label, Sounds of Khemit, which he mentioned to us, and they were releasing a compilation back 2 years ago, and we had a track called Poor Stranger, which we ended up sending it to him, and he really liked it. And from there on, we became really good friends. And Dan will.
Yeah, we remixed each other. So we did a remix for him, he remixed us, and happy days. Maybe more to come following years as well.
Nice. And Chris, you and I actually met because of another Mission Makers podcast. We've had you on the show before. You and I met at ADE 2 years ago. And since then we've developed a really nice friendship. Yeah, really excited to make my debut with Sounds of Kemet on the VA this year.
Chris, yes. So yeah, we've been big fans of Sounds of Kemet, to be honest, for a long time. But it was only till probably a couple of years back when we put two and two together and realised Mr. Nhii was the head honcho at Sounds of Kemet. One of our friends actually sent us in your direction. He said, I don't know if you know, but Nhii does a Patreon. And we were like, this is amazing, because obviously he's a big supporter of Sounds of Kemet and obviously Chris's music. So that's how we've got to know Chris over this sort of last couple of years, is working with him through his Patreon and now releasing music with Sounds of Kemet as well, which is amazing.
That's it. Yeah, that's how we know Chris.
Excellent. And we will talk about how Kakura and B.o.T got together as well. But 2 years on, Chris, how would you say that the vision and the experience of the Sounds of Kemet brand and label and community has evolved?
Yeah, I'm very content with the evolution and yeah, let's call it growth of the label. In many aspects. First of all, I think I'm very proud of the music catalog. The music we could sign in the last almost 3 years now. It's going to be 3 years in November since the label exists. And we started to do showcases. You've been actually at the first showcase we ever did as a label in Amsterdam 2 years ago. And since then, that was a very nice experience for me personally, because I never did events, organized events. So it was a challenge and also a learning experience for sure. And it turned out to be successful in many ways, more so in having a community and know that there are people who feel same about music than you do, and that's a very powerful feeling, I think. And yes, and since then we've been trying to establish ourselves more and more in this industry. It's a Shark Tank, as they call it. But we are in a field of music where there are many genuine and nice promoters, people around us, which help us. And now we're doing showcases. Yeah, we did one in Copenhagen this year. We did one in New York, in Berlin. So this was really a very, I would say, successful year for us. Yeah, very happy with it.
Nice. And the brand and the label has such a unique identity, exploring these sort of ancient Khemitian mythologies. How do you balance the sort of spiritual and mythological elements of the label, but also kind of, making sure that it sort of resonates on a dance floor?
I don't think it needs much balance, because the dance floor for many people, and me obviously, is sort of the spiritual practice. Being on a dance floor and dancing together is a powerful feeling, and I almost compare it to like a modern gospel, if you want, a modern Sunday service. Like, um, everybody believes in something else, but like in this moment, we are together and we are having this common experience, and I feel like this is a very powerful and also spiritual experience. Yeah, so I don't think it needs much balance. It goes very well together, in my opinion, with the right music.
So I think it'll be really interesting to kind of lay the landscape as we're sort of closing out the year. How is everybody feeling about electronic music in 2024? What's exciting you? What's not exciting you? And maybe we'll start with Kakura. Amber, I shall pass the mic to you.
Thank you. What is exciting me? I think possibilities are still really exciting. I think it's so easy to focus on we here in the UK are going through a tough time. I think particularly like we live up north, being outside of London. We come from Manchester, which is obviously a very big hub of music. And for us, it's kind of been really a year of bunkering down into production, really. But I think for me, it's the genres are really expanding. The sort of, I think to come to something I don't like first to explain what I do like is sometimes there's a little bit of snobbery I find as well about like certain genres that are kind of coming through, or people sort of feeling like that isn't real music or it's business techno, or and all these kind of like phrases that are thrown around. And I think particularly for us, we've seen a style of music coming out of Manchester of some quite heavy techno, and it's just amazing to see young people just getting out, socializing, being together, partying. Obviously the landscape has changed. A lot of people can't afford to go out now. We are in a cost of living crisis, but I think sometimes we focus a lot on Europe as well as just like the home for everything. But we've played gigs in Pakistan and Africa and stuff, and just seeing those markets still expand is really exciting. But I've been talking to a lot of people about how people have found Ibiza this summer as well. And I think I'm getting a sense that people may have reached a slight saturation point with some of the parties being so oversold. I think that's what I'm hearing. A lot of feedback is that people aren't able to dance and kind of move. So I think we measure a lot from how Ibiza is done in a summer. And I think it's speaking to something.
Yeah, I think just to echo what Amber said there, but the opportunities in terms of beyond the dance floor as well. The dance floor is just one aspect of electronic music, and with technology, with AI, it's going to open up a lot of doors. I think it's just the people who are the most flexible and have their eyes open are probably going to be the people who adapt to that as well, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. If the pandemic taught us anything, is that we really need to be agile and adapt, and not be surprised by sometimes seismic shifts, which we may not have seen coming. But yeah, going over to my right here, Dan, how are you? How are you feeling about it all?
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. But I also think that there's sort of like a trend of trying imitating one another. I feel like there's a lot of tracks that sound the same, or everyone trying to imitate whoever is trending. So there's sort of like a chase to be trending and looking like the top star DJs. Whereas maybe in the past, probably I'm a bit nostalgic of those era, but that era that you could people would go to a club to get their phone out, maybe to shut down the track, but now they only get their phone out to take a video of the DJ, right? And this shows that in the past there was more a focus towards research or trying to be unique, as opposed to imitating. So I think maybe because you asked also what is probably the negative side, I think this could be maybe the downside Whereas, yeah, the upside, I agree with you. There's like a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of genre bendings. Bringing elements from Afro to house, or maybe a dubstep wobble onto drum and bass, or mixing it all together. So this is the cool part, but the other one, probably the downside, is like maybe the imitation. That yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of you as well. And I think what's exciting would be the artists that are actually in the current scene pushing boundaries right now, who are trying to invent something new, who are trying to take risks, even though it can be really tough in the current scene if you don't follow the certain formula or follow the certain trends. So I really respect that. And a lot of artists, those artists are in this room right now as well. And yeah, I
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, yes, and yes. Okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's positives and negatives to all, right? And in a way, like I like what you said about genre bending, because in a way, like that is quite exciting. Like there aren't those boxes seem to be coming out a lot, which is quite exciting. And yeah, but I think it is quite sort of impossible to ignore the fact that London and just globally, it's just the scene is under such an enormous challenge. Um, and there's obviously the cost of living crisis, there's political tensions, recovery from the pandemic. And I think recently when Watergate announced its closure in Berlin, I think it took a lot of the industry by surprise, because I just don't think we all saw it coming, because like Berlin had just received a UNESCO status for its contribution to culture in electronic music. There's been so many huge governmental grants, and if they couldn't survive against that, it was a very hard thing to see. So um Nhii, I'm quite interested to know, because you've obviously mentioned that the label has got an events focus, and that is really important for labels. So have you had to navigate any of this doing events that are actually quite global?
Absolutely. I'm very aware of the fact that this copying mechanism Dan mentioned is happening, and also contributing to the fact that a lot of the audience is like really focusing over a small part of the main DJs, like a handful of top stars, which are like booked on all festivals all the time. And so my understanding of house music is more that it should be accessible to people. It should be the music should be in the foreground. Innovative spirit, sort of progressiveness. That all is connected to me when I talk about house music in a big term as the genre. And what happened in New York, I mean, everywhere basically, is that ticket prices got so expensive, and that's something I definitely want to counteract with Sons of Kemet, because our ticket prices in New York, I try to keep them as low as possible, because I'm more interested in having this community, yeah, this common ground for like a proper party, like everyone is equal. This is what I stand for, and the label stand for.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And it's hard, because I think there is a part of it where the prices have just gone up, so unfortunately that price has to come back from somewhere. And secondly, there's still a huge recovery from the pandemic. And obviously when you see also like other DJs who are like just pricing themselves to a ridiculous degree, and promoters accepting that, unfortunately it creates a domino effect for others in the market space. um Kyle, you touched upon a specific formula that others might be adopting. I'm just curious to know what is that formula?
I think it's just a formula based on current trends and what the market is doing and what's the in music right now. And the current that formula is followed because they also want to come and reach that ladder, same as the other artists. I think that formula just could be based on any genre or anything that's upcoming, and then that formula can keep changing based on what's trending in the market, so people can accept them and they can be part of the community. Uh, Dan, would you like to add anything on this?
Yeah, no, I mean the formula. What I'm seeing, at least to sort of like, if you want to say make it right now, if that's was your question, is what I'm seeing is that all artists are trying to sort of like, even though they want to maybe make something that's true to themselves, they tend to sort of like put their taste maybe on the side to try and maybe sound like. So there's a level of adaptation, and I feel like nowadays, the more you adapt, the more you sound like the current trends, the more chances you have of being booked. As opposed, there's no support for individuality, right? Like maybe in the past, there was a focus on being more unique, more yourself, and having your own sound and be respected for that. Now it's more about sounding like a bit like everyone else. And I don't know if it's a formula, but it looks like that you kind of like have to really come with path with the devil to sort of like, yeah, I like this, but I'm gonna also throw a bit of this because if I do that, then it will be picked up more by a larger audience. Sort of. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting points because I think all of us here are just quite like I'm not being biased, but been just knowing how all of us are creatively. Like I think we are all very different in how we make music. I don't think it is formulaic. I think if you listen to all of our records, they all do sound quite different. Although there would be a common red line. Obviously, you can tell that it's come from that producer. But it's a bit more out of the box, and it's just interesting because like with trends, what tends to happen is like everyone's sort of like jumping on a trend, but it takes the person who is the innovator to create the next trend and for then everybody else to try and copy that person, but then that person's already 10 steps ahead because they're writing way into the future. So and it's so refreshing. Like I mean today just preparing for this set, and I'm sure we all face it. It's like how much digging, it all just sounds, so much of it sounds the same. Like you go on the top 100 charts in any genre in Beatport and it's just so obvious how much is so predictable. And then when you hear that one that just stands out, you're like, oh my God, yes, thank you. But it takes like, I don't know, it would be like 5 or 10 out of 100 that is going to sound unique and is going to be in my record bag. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to add anything but.
I think I totally agree with everything that you've said. I think what I would probably say is, I mean, what's happened in the last 10 to 15 years with electronic music is it's exploded. And with that has come a lot of competition, a lot of people, a lot of places. The pie has got bigger in a sense that there's a lot more people who are into electronic music now, but it's become extremely competitive. And part of the reason I think that people are creating music to sound like other people is what we're talking about really is people are scared. They're scared to basically try and move out of what they're doing because they might want to make a career out of it. And maybe there's not a career in just being extremely individual, that person who sits in your bedroom just making them tunes. So there is an element of having to adapt to the business that's moving, and we would all love to sit there and just create and create and create. But unfortunately, the electronic music scene seems to be the industry decides basically who gets put forward, doesn't it? Which rightly or wrongly, it just is how it is given the development in the scene.
Yeah, definitely some very important points you pointed out there. And I also think equally as you mentioned, like the scene obviously has exploded, but also that's also put a lot of artists who didn't want to be producers in a very awkward situation where they are now just required to be able to produce, and it's a different language altogether to be able to produce. And so yeah, that's the situation, right? Kakura and B.o.T, you have the unique dynamic of working as a duo, which is quite, it's probably a lot of fun, right? Because you can hold each other accountable. Obviously, being an artist, a solo artist, is a really solitary path. Like you're always traveling by yourself. You can only answer to yourself. So I'm curious, like, how do you both approach working as a duo? How do you maintain a healthy balance between your personal and professional lives while respecting each other's creative boundaries?
Yeah. No, I made a great point. I mean, this could be a quite lonely job. So being in a duo, this definitely helps. Also, having another set of ears can help you when you get stuck in the studio. Sometimes the studio can become also a fight ring, and but definitely helps to get through it. And also, given that nowadays, like being an artist is more like running a business, is like running a brand, right? So you don't no longer just focus solely on music and mixing, but it's also you have to look about how to run ads, your social presence, pitching tracks to labels, and all of that. So having two of us that can split some tasks can help us better focus on the music. So
Yeah, I think it definitely helps the creative process and makes you more innovative. Two people can come up with more ideas and can go a long way. Otherwise, as you said, music can be a lonely hobby, and it's hard to push in this current market as well with all the things it demands. Because before you could just make music and be a rock star and things would be fine, but we don't live in those times anymore, sadly. Um, so yeah.
Nice. And Amber and Sean are husband and wife. So there's obviously a foundation of romance in your artistic duo. Yeah, tell our audience a little bit about that and how you sort of maintain those boundaries as well professionally.
Gosh, where to begin? Well, our origin story is literally we got together pretty much because of music. You know, it's such a foundation of our love, to be perfectly honest. We met at a house party and then we were at a festival the next day with each other, booking Ibiza within 2 weeks of knowing each other. Went 5 times in the summer, and this is 13 years ago. You know, we've been together for the long haul.
First DC-10 experience, yeah, together was.
Lots of my friend Alex is sat in the audience today, and she used to see us sat in the smoking area of Sankey's just talking, and she's like, "You guys," like. But yeah, so it's a real foundation of our love, which is helpful, I think. And then I think, you know, noticing in Sean particularly that there was a creativity and something in his imagination that he really wanted to get out in the world through music production. That he was connecting with it on a certain level, that he wanted to sort of expand that imagination. And it came with its challenges, didn't it? Like, we moved to London, I was going hard in my world of TV and documentary, and all of a sudden, you know, you're aware of the fact that you're partners, but you're just talking about work all the time. Your life is work, you know, it's the grind. You get to the weekend, you're exhausted. It's really hard to have those boundaries of, without sounding cheesy, like still being like lovers to each other and still being like, you know, husband and wife and boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. But yeah, you can talk about that was a big challenge for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, obviously, even until this day, it continues to be a challenge of trying to work together whilst keep that love in your relationship. I think what we've probably realized over the course of the last 13 years is through the mistakes that we've made, we try to adapt and bring each other's strengths through, rather than thinking you have to be a certain way and I have to be a certain way. We try to play to our strengths a bit more and things now, which has been a huge help, I think. But yeah, I mean, we continue to learn at the end of the day, don't we?
I would say as well, there's an amazing strength in, because, you know, Sean it does primarily do most of our music production. I primarily make my documentaries, but having each other as like a touch base of someone who's not in the like weeds of the creative process and like, you know, been in the studio for hours and I've been in the edit for hours. It's like we've built that kind of trusted opinion and respect in each other that I know his fresh head is like so helpful to me and vice versa. So yeah.
Nice. I love it. Well, there's probably never been so many artists pitching to leading labels because of what we've talked about with how many producers there are now on the table. And so, Nhii, as the label founder, how many pitches do you receive a week? And what is it that, you know, sparks your interest? What are you looking for when signing new talent?
When signing new talent, it's mostly about the creativity I see in the music. The sound design obviously needs to be on point. My background is a audio engineering background, so I'm very technical with music. I want obviously everything to sound perfect. And then comes the composition, which needs to be working on a dance floor because we are a dance label. And a lot of times, that's why I can really confirm Dan's claim. I get tracks which sound exactly like Beatport charting tracks as a demo. And I was like, okay, I can listen to this 10 seconds and I stop it and move on to the next track. We really look for uniqueness in line with my vision of sound design, basically. And how many demos I receive, it's funny. It really depends on days and weeks. Some weeks, hot summer weeks, there's 2 demos coming, and then when it was raining for 2 weeks, you get like 50. It's funny. It's a fun experience. But cool thing about it is, those are all people who want to make it in the industry, so they dream the same dream, and you have this connection with them, right? I always try to be nice, and it's not always possible to write a lot to the tracks, but I always try to be nice. And maybe if I hear something obvious, I would like tell them, you guys want technical feedback to this because there's something popping out here. So I try to be helpful and nice when people send demos. Yeah,
And you actually reply.
I actually reply. Yeah.
Amazing. But like, is there anything when someone pitches you on an email? Is there anything that you could say makes like a good pitch? If you want to hear the rest of our conversation, then head over to Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you get your podcasts.